All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond podcast. Man, I know y'all probably like, well, when he coming out with another episode, he taking his sweet time. We in winter now. Well, look, life has been lifing. I'm trying to get to this 50 episodes has been slow moving, but here we are, episode 29 of season 3. This will be the 118th episode of Resilient Voices and Beyond. So, that being said, thank you all for your continuous support, kindness, love, care, compassion, messages. Not just for me, but for the guests who've been on here, supporting their businesses, their nonprofits, their books, their work in general, and them in general. I truly appreciate it. Not only have you guys been monumental for me as an individual and for my work, but also for them as well. So thank you for that. Um, you guys can come here for that. If you have happily stumbled across this podcast and you don't know who I am, who is this person talking? My name is Michael D. Davis Thomas, aka MDT. MDDT speaks. I spent approximately 11 years in the Michigan child welfare system, half of that being on the juvenile justice side, the other half being on the foster care side. Been advocating since 15. Been working in this space professionally since then, honestly. Um, but yeah, that's why I'm here today. That's what this podcast came out of, my own story. But you guys aren't here for me. You guys are here for my guests. So without further ado, have her introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Miranda Mizla. I am an LLMSW, former graduate of Wayne State University, macro social worker, and a former foster care advocate and alumni.
Awesome, awesome. Well, first I just want to say it's truly a pleasure to have you on. Um, I know the audience probably don't know, but we go way back. Man,
Yes, we do.
go way back. Um, I don't I just got a little side story. I just got invited to a CWTI training for Monday.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
but some of you Michiganders, social workers may understand what that is. But yeah, it's truly a privilege to have you on to be on the other side of both of our experience and being able to talk to you today and your now. So, without further ado, I like to kind of start these off with myself and the audience really getting to know you. I feel like I know a little bit about you, but I feel like I'm going to learn a lot more today. So, if you don't mind, my first question is, can you help myself and the audience understand the timeline of events um, from your experience of care to being a LM MSW now?
Yeah. So I haven't told my full story in probably maybe over 10 years, which is around the time I met you. So I probably will tell my story in full. Most likely because I might not ever tell it in full again, unless I decide to write a book. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Um, so I grew up in a home where from a young age, I had witnessed domestic violence. I was the oldest of three children, and I felt the need to protect my mom and my siblings, but I was just a kid, and there was really nothing that I could do. So, for a majority of my young years, I felt quite helpless. Um, before I was born, my mom had a massive injury. She actually fell off of a building, which could have easily been fatal. So when I was young, my mom fell victim to the opioid epidemic. And once her addiction began, she stopped working. My father struggled with several mental illnesses and couldn't hold down a job. And my mother was no longer working, so we grew up in poverty. Um, really the poorest of the poor. My father also had substance use issues and couldn't remain sober except for very brief periods of time. His specific drug of choice was mainly alcohol, but he would use other things as well. I will take a moment to use some of my education really quick here, though, because we know that mental illness and substance use does not cause domestic violence. There are many people who struggle with these issues on a daily basis who do not cause harm to others. This just so happened to be occurring simultaneously in the home. So, ever since I can remember, my father was either at home or in jail. And for some time, he was actually homeless in between. My mom gave him an ultimatum to choose his family or alcohol, and he ended up choosing alcohol. I've seen my father arrested many times from a very young age, which caused a lot of trauma for me. I think that that's enough to cause intense trauma for just about anyone. Um, Both of my parents also had experienced trauma as young people and never quite had the opportunity or privilege to seek help for it. So, with that being said, we grew up in severe poverty. We didn't ever have the trendy clothes or lots of toys. I wasn't really able to relate to a lot of other kids my age, and that made me feel unseen by my peers for a very long time. There were a few years from elementary to middle school that I was bullied. So from there on, I kept a very small, um, closely knit friend group. Fast forward, my parents divorced when I was in middle school. I believe it was sixth or seventh grade. I was about 12 years old. Even after the divorce, though, my father would still come and go from time to time. I know that when it comes to um, domestic violence specifically, it often takes survivors of violence on average approximately 7 to 10 times before permanently leaving an abusive relationship. And then when you add the element of no financial security, a nearly non existent support system, and 3 children, it had to have been, I'm sure, exceptionally challenging for my mom to make decisions on behalf of what was best for her family. So, fast forward again to me being in high school. There were no finances for bills at this time, among many other things that led us into care, just choices that were made or were not made. To this day, I still, I never will really be able to truly comprehend what it was like for my mom to have to make the choices that she did. But it was really hard to live in a home full of uncertainty and at times just danger. Being around other adults coming in and out of the home who were addicted to drugs and being exposed to that at a very young age was unfair. Even more because, I was the oldest. I was exposed to a lot more. I was a lot more cognizant of, what had been, happening around me. And I had to watch my mom fall deeper and deeper into addiction. And there was really nothing I could do. My mom seemed to, I think because, she was a survivor of domestic violence, she seemed to always be in fight, flight, or freeze mode. Um, so there was really no true family cohesion ever. And most times, because of my age, the personal boundaries between my mom and I were diffused. I believe this is called enmeshment. I could be wrong. Um, I felt like my mom's problems were mine to carry as well. And that was a really large burden for me to bear at such a young age. So in April of 2013, I believe I was in my junior year of high school. It was spring break, actually. One thing led to another, and we found ourselves abruptly evicted from our home because, that really never happens slowly. Um, and then in the state's custody. How I remember it was I was sitting at home on the couch watching TV. My mom's boyfriend was in her room. She was in the shower. We heard banging at the door, and then somebody just entered. and they had everything removed from our apartment within maybe 20 minutes. At this time, my father was in jail and he was unaware of what had happened. Initially, which I don't believe Michigan does anymore, my sister and I were sent to an emergency placement facility in Oakland County. We were separated from our much younger brother. So my sister and I are 2 years apart, and my brother is 9 years younger than me. My sister and I actually didn't really get along much growing up, but when all of this went down, we became very close. We became best friends. So being in that residential facility was truly a unique experience, to say the least. When we were sent to that facility, we received, I believe, two trash bags, one for me, one for her, with some of our personal items. Because of the type of facility it was, a lot of our other items were not allowed in and were honestly never to be seen again. So we were at that facility for, I think, 2 weeks before being sent to Imlay City to live with someone there. Now, mind you, we all grew up in Macomb County, always. We always stayed in Macomb County. At this time, in Imlay City, transportation was being sent from Macomb County all the way to Imlay City for us to go to our schools of origin because we were always in the same school district. So I believe that the school had orchestrated that to keep some sense of normalcy in our lives. So we did this from May to June of 2013. So about a month and a half at the most. It was really hard for me to even focus on school because my family had just been torn apart. And because we had missed quite a significant amount. Because when we were at that residential facility, we were going to school there for 2 weeks, which was just really odd. So at this new placement in Imlay City, we had to be up by 4:30 a.m. to be on the bus by 6 a.m. to get to school by 7. And then the same thing at the end of the day. So a lot of our day was just spent on transportation, and it was truly exhausting. The home that we lived in out there should not, and I say this wholeheartedly, should not have passed inspection. Is all I will say. It was dirty. And my sister and I were heavily mistreated and neglected there before being kicked out. So that was truly a horrifying experience, to say the least. Um, our third and final placement was back in Macomb County. We were relatively familiar with the people who were fostering us. So we were there from June of 2013 to late 2014. The transition was smooth and things had gone well for actually quite some time. I, was missing a lot of credits because of how poorly I was doing in school. So my foster mom was able to help me with that. We had visitation with both of our parents and some other close family members, including our brother, which was also pleasant. I will say initially when we were all separated, my brother went to go live in Armada. And then he was actually sent to our home in Imlay City for like a month. And then we left, he stayed. We went to Macomb, and then he ended up going to Warren with this amazing, amazing foster family. I will never forget that woman. So fast forward again to summer of 2014. I can't believe, I had just graduated high school. I cannot believe that it'll now be 10 years that I've been out of high school. That is wild to me. But that time during my life was an emotionally strenuous time for me, because I had been trying to come to terms with my sexual identity. And I felt it was time to not only come to terms with it, but to stop pretending to be someone that I just knew I would never be. I knew from a very, very young age, and it took about over a decade to truly acknowledge. So at that time, I felt like I was trying to outrun an inevitable outcome. So I did decide to tell my support network, actually at my graduation party. I don't know why I chose that day. I believe it was sometime in July. But this was prompted because right after graduating high school, I went into this summer internship via my high school. They had this like program for at-risk vulnerable youth. And I had been seeing someone during that internship that I was doing that summer right before college. So when I came out to my bio mom, she was so accepting, and she did state that she had her suspicions for some time. And my sister had already known for a very long time, so of course I didn't really even need to tell her. Um, then my foster parents found out, and it all kind of went downhill from there. They So my foster mom pulled me into her room the day she found out, and she started to ask me very, very uncomfortable questions about how I knew, when I knew, and how that worked, so to speak, if you know what I mean. I found those questions to be grossly and entirely inappropriate for her to be asking a 17-year-old girl. I found it even more odd because she and her husband had friends in the LGBTQIA identifying community. So I was a bit flabbergasted at that. My bio dad, at the time he was not in jail. He was a religious man. He always was, and was not accepting or unaccepting, because he did have so much love for me, but was just kind of indifferent. Um, so I felt like, I was being looked at differently by people that I, loved and respected, and was dealing with just too much rejection. And I was also dealing with, a lot of self shame. At this time, I did start to engage in harmful behavior. This was probably because I hadn't yet developed any healthy coping mechanisms. So when my foster parents found out about what I had been doing to myself, they stated that they couldn't and that they wouldn't help me, which made no sense because they worked with my age group on a day-to-day basis. They essentially told me that it made them look bad, and that I had to not only be seen by a medical professional for an evaluation, but that I should also just pack my bags. So this was in September of 2014. I will never forget the day that they found out, because my foster dad walked into the room and he looked right at me, and he said, "You are dead to me." And he left. My sister was downstairs in the kitchen, and she felt like there was nothing she could do, she didn't contribute to what I was doing to myself. She had no control. She was just a teenager. Luckily, during this time, my mom had secured a stable job. She had become sober. She got an apartment and a car and was just doing very well. And we were set for reunification. So the team at MDHHS was in contact with my foster family at the time, and already knew that we had a hearing that following month and would most likely be sent home. I know my foster parents were also bitter about that, because when things were well at the time when I was living there in the beginning, they wanted to adopt me. The relationship that my foster parents had with my mom was not a good one. They almost never had anything nice to say about her and were banking on adopting me. So I think they held a lot of resentment towards her. I'm not exactly sure, but that also was difficult for me and my siblings, especially me and my sister who were living together, because we still loved our mom and they couldn't stand her. Um, so, right, so I was likely to be sent home that following month anyway. So I was actually sent home early. Um, and my siblings came home about a month later. So at that family team meeting, when we were all talking about the decision to send me home early, after that meeting, my foster mom right? That was the last time I saw her. She looked at me and she said, "Why would you tell them that Mike told you that um, were that you were dead to him?" And I was like, "Well, because that's exactly what happened." I never saw them again. I think I maybe saw them once, but they never said anything to me, which was fine. But so I got home and my mom, she stood by me and supported me through that very difficult period of my life. There was a lot of things going on. There was a lot of self-shame regarding my identity, things I had been doing. I just felt alone. Um, but I am so endlessly grateful for my mom. She accepted me with open arms, and got me the help that I needed. Um, but unfortunately, uh, so 3 years after we were all sent home, right, we all reunified. It was a great reunification. Everything went as planned. Um, my father ended up actually succumbing to his battle with mental illness, and with his addiction. It was tragic, losing a parent at only 20 years old. It took me a really long time, going through the stages of grief to realize that there really wasn't anything I could have done for him. Um, so, you know, I'm sure this happens with a lot of people who are grieving, but I held a lot of resentment towards myself, for a very long time because the last time that I saw him was at my grandma's funeral, which was his mom, and that was just 2 months previous. And I had not realized how bad it had actually become. So, this event, of course, was different for all of us because, I mean, while we were mourning the loss of our dad, who we all had a different relationship or a lack of relationship with, my mom finally felt safe, and free from someone who had hurt her for decades. But also, of course, she had conflicting emotions because she loved him so deeply because he was the father of her children and he would always be. I will never forget this, and I don't think my mom ever intended out loud to say it, but the day we found out about his passing, she said, "I am finally safe. I don't have to worry about him hurting me anymore." Um, all of those years ago, my mom was a shell of the person she is now. I cannot stress enough what a warrior, queen, just amazing, strong, independent woman she is now, and how far she has come. So fast forward right to now to 2024. My mom, and she gave me permission to say this, but she is 10 years sober. I truly admire her strength and resilience every single day. Um, as for me, the person I was seeing right before college is now my wife. We got married in, just this past October. We are all doing exceptionally well. My sister will have her master's degree in a few months. My mom is in college as well, and my brother graduates high school this year and goes off to trade school. So that is my story in short.
Wow. Hmm. And then
Yeah,
sitting back, taking it all in. So I think when back in the day, because we well, I'm gonna say I'm getting older. I let me choose my words carefully. Um, I think I heard the side of your experience and your placements.
yeah,
Your experience with your workers. Um,
yeah,
but you know, one thing I love about us people who go through things like, you can tell that there's a lot of stuff underneath, the surface and stuff like that. But it was definitely being around you, and the other people are part of the group that, and I'm talking about NYY. But I met Miranda through NYY and panels and different things like that. So um it was always just a feeling of love and connection and support that I got from you. And that's something that Um, I tend, as I'm getting into this adulthood and having the privilege of talking with some people who made major impacts in my life. I want you to know and give you your flowers. Like, you made a tremendous impact in my life. The friendship, the camaraderie that you gave me throughout all that you have been through. Now, listening to the full thing, I was just like, you could have just been as rude as heck to me going, and that would have been okay. That, I look, but always was welcoming, always a smile on your face, always coming to greet, myself and other individuals I was with. So I just truly appreciate that. And you being who you are, despite of and in spite of. Um, with that being said, do you mind if we conversate a little bit and break down some of these things? Because I have some questions about some
Sure.
of the things you experience, and to dive a little bit deeper and hopefully provide some insight, some tips, some advice to those listening.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to go back to, if at all possible, go back to you being the oldest sibling,
Yeah.
but younger. The first time you realized what was happening to your mom, the environment not really being okay. Um, what, because you talked about feeling a need to protect your mom, and then you also brought up later on um feeling a need to take on your mom's, um I guess, lack of better word, the burdens, you
Yeah.
know. Um and correct me if I'm wrong, but it tends to be a trend sometimes when things happen. I don't know if you ever felt like you had became a parentified youth with your siblings in a way, but I'd be interested to hear, what did that look like for you, and what was your mindset um, going through that, and how did mental health play a part in that, and your then versus your now, being able to look back at that.
Yeah. So I first really realized what was happening in the home, like truly, probably around the age of 8 or 9. I witnessed strangulation on behalf of my, parents, going to the, police department with my mom, pressing charges, doing all of those different things. And that was really hard. I felt like I had to be there for my mom because my siblings were not fully aware of what was going on in the home. And they were a bit more sheltered than I was. So my mom did, come to me with a lot of her problems, because she didn't have a support network. She didn't have anybody that she could go to because she was isolated, which happens a lot with domestic violence. So it was almost as if I was her little therapist. Um, but and I do not and never will resent her for that. Um, but yeah, I do feel like, I did have to parent my siblings. Because there were times where my mom was AWOL. I didn't know where she was, so I, had to learn how to cook when I was in middle school, take care of my siblings, make sure things were done. Then my mom would come back and she would take that back over, but it almost felt like we were sharing like them as parents, which was a really weird feeling for somebody, to be in seventh grade and having that mindset.
Mm.
And I think because of that, and this is sad. This is not a good thing. It's sad, but I felt like I had to become a lot more mature at a very young age because I didn't really have a childhood. So I did feel like, I don't know what they call that. I don't know if that's parentification or adultification, but I knew that I was experiencing that. Um, and because of that, my self-care, and I can tell you my full self-care or mental health journey, but at the time, it was not good. I, I was struggling a lot. I was depressed. I had anxiety. and I had undiagnosed traumatic stress, which I didn't find out actually until a few years ago. So I think the biggest way for me that it showed up, and I can tell you how that was resolved, was nightmares. It really ruined my mental health. I had reoccurring nightmares about 4 to 5 times a week for approximately 15 to 20 years,
Mhm.
which was extremely tough because I couldn't ever truly figure out why, because it's not like they were always related to my life experiences. They would just be bad dreams, constantly. So at that time, it was not good until eventually, after everything kind of changed after that reunification, my mom was a completely different person, somebody I hadn't even ever met before. um, she helped me get help. I had been in therapy throughout my life, but it wasn't until our lives really changed, in a positive way, that I was able to get the help that I actually needed.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah,
Um, I think about how you share, um, how you share and how you talk about your mom. And I know the relationship and the lens we have as children, there's like a transition as we get into adulthood. And I think about my experience with my mother
yeah,
and the transition to what I see and what I know now.
right.
I think I've spoken on a couple episodes. My mom contributed to my abuse, but also one thing in the lens now, knowing my mom didn't have the best supports to be the best parent to me, and that wasn't her fault.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You know, as kids, we're understanding, but I don't think we fully see the full picture, or and in all honesty and scientifically, we can't really conceptualize that or understand that, um, with a good portion of our brains not being developed yet.
Right. 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 Yeah.
I like to think of now like understanding that, like, my view then, and all the stress, all the trauma, angry frustration. And it's weird, because we are built to love our parents, to care for them. I grew up, with whoopings, spankings, beatings, whatever you name it,
Yeah.
And I know there's a couple other people that probably listen grew up in those same kind of households where, after you done, even after you get the whooping, you supposed to you be mad at this person, you still run back
Oh, of course.
that same
Yeah.
person, which would be your mom or your dad. And as an adult now, I was thinking, and I was like, dang, that's what we do. And I really was thinking hard about that concept and then the relationship I had. But to circle that back, um, I want to know, um, as that lens has transitioned, and as you have processed some things, I'm sure, through your own journey of healing, growing, maturing in life, and even going through school and doing the work that you do now, have you had candid conversations with your siblings and with your mom about some of your experiences, like closing those circles?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. While my mom is a completely different person, than she used to be, she still does have some similar characteristics that she did when I was young. I mean, that's just a part of her personality. And I found that sometimes when those parts of her came out, which weren't inherently bad,
Mhm,
I would be triggered by
mhm,
by those things. Same with my brother and sister. And so my brother, thankfully, he was so, so, so young. So I'm not sure exactly how much he truly remembers, or if that's better or worse. I really don't know. But we have had those conversations. Um, but I think really the most difficult thing for my family was the grieving of my dad, because he wasn't necessarily an abusive parent when he was taking meds, which was almost never, or when he wasn't using. But holding on, we did definitely, all of us, hold on to resentment for a very long time. And I think that it took my sister and my brother a lot more of a long time than myself to kind of forgive, the things that he did. He was not well, but again, he was also an abuser by choice. So that was really, really hard for my family to let go of. But we were all just thankful that, my mom is safe now. We don't have to worry about that anymore. And even more, just like, what good is it going to do you to hold on to anger for a person that is no longer with us? So I think that was the biggest thing for my family, coming to that realization. He is no longer here. We cannot change the past. We have to figure out how to let go in some way and move forward, even if it is extremely hard, and even if it includes some form of therapy.
Definitely, definitely. I want to switch gears here a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Um, Now, living in life now. Um,
Yeah. Very different.
Living is very different, and if you're anything like me, a lot of the experiences I've had, uh, they've made me who I am today.
Yeah.
Um, and after going through the therapy and the healing and stuff like that, and continuous healing journey, because I believe it's a journey, for at least for me. Um,
Definitely.
um, I can say that life life is it's a little bit different, but I have like this unique perspective on things.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
So my question to you, and feel free to be like, no, bump that. Um, as a fellow, um, or fellow, yeah, fellow child or young adult who had divorced parents.
Yeah.
Um, you are married now.
I am
Uh,
married. Yeah.
what walk me through, and feel free to provide any tips within this, to those other individuals who've experienced, broken households, due to whatever circumstance or situation that may be applicable. How you navigated that journey for yourself, and did any things that you observed throughout your childhood play a part in your dating life and the road to being married. And if you don't mind me asking, how you continue to be married.
um, so what I will say is that my wife and I did not have I I mean, we did have similar backgrounds in a way. I won't get too much into that for her own
Mm.
sake, because I didn't get consent from her. But what I will say is that we both grew up seeing similar things, witnessing similar things, living similar but also different lifestyles. And so, and I can always tell you, more about that. But coming together, being together for a while now. Like, I knew her 10 years ago. We split, got back together a few years ago, and now we're, permanently together. But I think just like I think we learned from the things we witnessed growing up, at least for me, like the things I saw were not okay. It is not okay to ever maintain or establish power and control over another person. um, Power should be free flowing between two people. You should be making decisions together. You should be communicating when you are upset or when something is wrong. But we also try to abide by, like, also, it is never okay to call somebody names, because if you call someone a name, it doesn't matter. You can take that back. Even if you apologize, you cannot take that back. Things that happened said to me well over a decade ago, just because somebody apologized, does not mean that I didn't forget about it. So we really do try our best to treat each other with just the utmost respect and kindness, even when we are having really, really bad days or going through a hard time, which has happened recently. Her grandma had an accident, and we both just had to be really understanding and respecting of each other's time. I think it does also help to have, we do have our own independent lives, our own friends, our own time we spend apart from each other, because we both do work full time. And so being able to spend that time apart from each other and then come back together and really enjoy our time with each other at the end of the day or on the weekend. I just really look forward to seeing her. Um, so we really just try not to let the things from our upbringing affect us or um, lead to decisions we make as adults now. We are trying to essentially live completely opposite lives of that we saw, in our guardians and in our parents growing up.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to ask questions, um questions like that to individuals that I talk to that marry, have kids, and tend to break the mold um, from what they have saw or what they experienced through others or through their past. Because it's always interesting. I get a different response from everyone. It's always interesting to me, at least, to hear how or what that looked like. Um, and I think I asked that because in ways, even for myself, this would be me kind of telling on myself. I'm a big so for you and for the audience, I'm a thinker. um,
Same.
yeah, I'm very much of a thinker and I process things. So I've asked a question, being a person who watched my parents divorce, who came in the household and all my dad's stuff was gone.
Yeah.
Found out my dad had a whole nother family somewhere, all these other different things. Um, and um, even coming to terms with another experience, mom, my siblings have different fathers. My mom married my dad out of all of my siblings' fathers. And my mom passed away a couple years back. And weirdly enough, my siblings' fathers came to the funeral. My dad did not show up.
Oh,
My
wow.
dad messaged me, well, sent the message request through Facebook Messenger.
Yeah.
Uh, saying, sending a quick message wasn't really something too crazy. And for me, I got triggered. I really did get triggered because I'm like, for me and what I understand through watching that experience of divorce, not only my own experience of what I went through with them individually, um, but watching that experience of divorce and not seeing successful marriages, successful commitments growing up, I
Right.
I was truly disappointed at that thought. And I think what triggered me the most is in my mind, I went to a place I'm like, these people who did not marry her showed up despite what they had.
Yeah.
And you took time, went down to the court, whatever y'all did,
Right.
filed all this, and did it. Despite whatever happened, I just feel like, and then you had a child out of it. So for me, I think I grew in a different respect, and perspective from that. But then I had to ask myself, why do I feel triggered by this? You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
um, and really get into it. So that's kind of the surface of why I asked that question, especially when it comes to individuals who have similar experiences of having divorced parents, and turn out being parents themselves, or being married or whatever. I always ask them what and how, you know, or what are really, what are you doing to set yourself apart, or how has that experience affected you and your decision making towards taking that commitment. And I know for myself, it's been a true journey.
Oh, yeah. I
um,
can imagine. Yeah.
I don't believe in wasting people time in no capacity, but especially in relationships.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
you
think
know
another, like, the biggest thing also for, me and my wife is that no matter what, I choose her every single day. At the end of every single day, she
Mhm.
is my person. And I tell her as much as I can, like, I have just such deep love for her. And I think that is also what sets, it apart from my parents. I know my mom loved my dad, and I'm sure at one point my dad did love my mom, but you do not hurt somebody that you love.
Mhm. And definitely. Well, I truly appreciate your vulnerability and your openness, and sharing that. Um, I want to switch gears, going back to um, where I met you.
Yeah.
I know that you got involved with MYOY. Um, how did that come about for you, and what was that experience like for you? Advocating, doing things within leadership with all you were going through in the background.
Yeah. So initially, um, I was really, really, really busy in the summer of 2014. I don't even know. Like, I had two jobs. I then, at the time, our foster care worker had then, started a conversation between me and my sister, and she was like, I think that this thing that we're doing at the MDHHS would be such a great opportunity for you. I think you should show up to one meeting and just see what happens. So my sister and I did. We showed up, and we met Marla, who ran our the MYOY. She was the MYOY coordinator there. I know you've had her on the podcast. She is truly just an amazing person, and I look up to her now as a colleague, and she was my role model for a really long time. Um, so yeah, so I started engaging in advocacy work with the Michigan Youth Opportunities Initiative locally, which is how I met you, right? We did panels for groups of social workers, lawyers, other foster parents. We were always doing speaking engagements, sometimes to really large crowds, which is really funny because I also do public speaking now, but when I was younger, I was terrified. So I don't even know what switched in me. But I really don't know. But and at one time, actually, I remember so vividly, Marla had coordinated something, and our MYOI group had met and spoke with Sandra Levin, which was a really, really unique experience that I really enjoyed. But then, time went on, and this led into more advocacy for me. I was asked to become a Jim Casey Fellow with the Annie E. Casey Foundation, um, which was an opportunity I never thought I would get. So I took it, and I spent a lot of my time traveling and advocating for change within the child welfare system on a national level. I made countless connections with representatives from other states. And I think at one point, the fellows, at this point, we were in Baltimore, Maryland. And we drove out to DC and we did mock press interviews with MSNBC Studios, if my memory serves me correctly. I just had a really great time advocating for things that I was really passionate about. But really quick, funny story. I don't want to get too off track here, but around this time also, I remember I went out with a friend for lunch one day,
Mhm.
just casual lunch, and we were talking, getting to chatting. And at the time, I was undecided in my early years of college, and he was in law school at Wayne State. And he looked right at me. He looked dead in my eyes, and he said, word for word, I will always remember this. He said, "You may not know this, but one day you are going to be a social worker." I laughed at him. I was like, sure, okay, whatever you say. But I had spent a lot of my time with social workers during that span of 6 to 8 years that I was doing advocacy. And I really enjoyed learning from them. And that is when I decided that my major would be social work. So that's when I pursued my degrees in social work, um, specifically macro. Um, I won't really get into what I do too much, but what I will say is just so many good things have come from it. I absolutely love my job, and I wake up every single day knowing that I make a difference, whether that is a big difference or a small difference. But I'm sure, as you know, all social work is challenging. Um, but I am very passionate about what I do. And also, just the people that I work with are just so phenomenal, unbelievably kind, intelligent, passionate, caring, and understanding people. And I think that really just creates for such a special atmosphere for me to be in every single day.
It's really is. It's amazing to hear the evolution because like I'm sitting here talking to you and I'm just like going back, and it's like, huh, last conversation I had with you was around that time,
Yeah,
and to come back and to see, life kind of flourish and see how you navigated, but also hear the other side of what life looked like outside of what I know.
yeah,
Um, it's really cool and it's really um it just helps me because I just like in times because I'm having like two thoughts at the same time, my brain. Um, for me, I just go back to what I said earlier. Like, one, you never know what someone else is going through. You really
truly.
don't. Yeah, and I'm learning that a lot, and I've been sitting in that and a lot as an adult. Like, you never truly know or understand. Like and the crazy thing, it doesn't matter how nice or how rude, like you don't know,
Yeah,
Um, and the best thing you can do in life is always walk and give compassion, you know.
yeah.
Um, and just to have that experience with you then and to still have this connection even though life is life and you know
Yes, it
we
is. Yes,
we
it is.
we both are two very very busy people. I I love that you stayed connected. I got to continue to see you flourish. I've seen your wedding and everything. The pictures were dope. um,
Thank you, Michael.
um but to see that, and I learned so much. I on top of being a thinker, I'm a observer too. So like I'm one of those people that learn from other people's experiences. Um, yeah, no, and a lot of people don't know how I be learning from their experiences, but I'm connected with a lot of people. And I utilize social media a lot differently than most, and just being connected with people on LinkedIn and different things like that. I get to see them through their journey, and I learn, I evolve, I study, um, and take heed of the words, because um a lot of people have a lot that I know that I can gain from.
Oh, yeah.
And
You know, Michael, you are always fostering connections, and I am just in awe of you and all that you've done and how far you've come and how successful you are and just how many people that you have connections with is just so amazing to see.
yeah, it literally, you know what it is, and I know you're probably gonna laugh at this. You know what it is?
What is it?
All them years of getting cards from people. Also, I promise you. Look, like, so funny story. Let me take y'all a little bit back. Um, Anybody listening that knows me from MYOI or knows me from an event way back when, you probably would laugh at this too, wherever you are. I always wanted to take one, either a picture with somebody or ask them for their business card. I still
Oh, yes.
have all those business cards with me. Like, and granted, I have been homeless. I've slept outside, slept in the car, slept in the bench. I've lost furniture, everything, but I've kept those business cards. And granted, when
That's
I
amazing.
started this podcast, I reached out to so many people from those cards. So I just like, if anybody that's young listening to this, always network, build connections because you never know. Like I've been able to make it through my connections, through networking, showing people kindness and compassion, and truly caring and being. I like to think a nice person. I like to think I am.
You are. You are a very good person, Michael.
But it's really cool because a lot of the people I've had on this podcast has been some really old relationships. And granted, life goes on, people do different things and stuff like that. But for some reason, I've been able to foster some of these beautiful relationships and connections with people. And it started from every time I would go somewhere or be invited, go to like we had the Michigan Teen Conference, we had
Yeah.
the Daniel Memorial Conference,
Oh, that was a blast. That
with
was so much
Foster
fun.
Club, NFYI, um, all these different organizations and different things, and having cool experiences to travel. I was always, hey, can I get your card? You don't got a card? You got to, something I can connect with or follow.
I love it.
And that's kind of how it's been, and how I am where I am today. Now I have a little bit more of a people meter. Um, uh, I've turned a little bit more into an ambivert, and I've learned to kind of be like, okay, Michael, your cup is running a little bit low. You only got about 2 more minutes with all these people. And it's real. It's real.
Oh,
Because
it is.
I love being around people, and I love to talk and I love to connect with people. But I also have moved into this space in my adulthood where I have to make sure because in my work, in my advocacy, and even in some of my hobbies, it's a lot of people oriented things.
Oh,
And I've
yeah.
given a lot out. So I have to make sure that I take time to give more into myself, and provide that time for my self care and my mental health. So moving into that perspective, what
Yeah.
does self care look like for you as you are a social worker? And any tips for any young social workers or individuals thinking about becoming social workers, you may have in the aspect of self care between the work they do, um, and balancing life?
I am not sure how qualified I am to answer this, but I will, I promise. So previous to becoming a social worker, I did have to go through extensive therapy for my life experiences. That included CBT and accelerated resolution therapy, which included like portions of ED or EMDR, which was really nice. But now I think because of that, I am in a very, very different place in my life. My confidence has skyrocketed, and people have noticed and they've told me that. And I think a big reason for that is because I do love my job. Um, it is just so valuable, being able to wake up every single day and go to a job that you love. Um, But regardless, if you are at a job you love or you don't, right, that job is still going to be challenging. Every job is challenging in its own way. And so I think for me, really just compartmentalizing, really trying my best to not take my work home, to not think about the things that I hear. Um, and somebody I work with, they gave me really important advice once, and I will never forget it. And I don't know who this will help, if it will help anybody. But they said, that they've tried to implement this thing where on their drive home from work, whether it's close to home or if it's a turn near home. I specifically live on the water. They were like, on that turn, when you are getting close to home, turn work off. That is where you turn work off. So leave work, think about it for a little while. Then when you get down that area, that road, that route, wherever you're going, that is when you get to control when to turn it off. And so that's been super helpful for me. So when I hit the water, I really do try my best. Um, but I think also just the biggest self care for me that I've been doing on and off for about a year now is focusing on how my body feels. So some sort of physical activity, really of any kind, just really helps me to clear my mind, especially when I'm not having a great day. Because before that, I really did struggle on how to take self care, what self care was, what the difference was between self care and self soothing. And yeah, so sometimes I'm not having a good time. I'm not having a great day. I've got a lot of bent up or pent up energy, and I don't know where to put it or what to do with it. So I focus on my body. And I never really believe other people when they said that physical activity helps your focus, but it does. Other than that, I mean, I do engage in a lot of self-soothing techniques like painting with my wife, watching my favorite TV shows like Law and Order SVU, or right now Grey's Anatomy. We actually started Grey's Anatomy in December, and now we're on season 9, which is crazy. Um, and I also spend a ridiculous amount of time with my cats, who are my best friends. So
Man, I was with you until you said Grey's Anatomy. Um, man, look. We not gonna get into that because
such a good show. It's such a good show.
man, oh, there's so many questions, so many things I would love to continue to ask, but want to be mindful. And as we get ready to close out this episode, I have two more things I want to ask.
Yeah.
Um, what advice would you like to leave here today? And I want to switch this because you did give some advice. This would be unique to you. I don't know if it ever happened again. If it does, somebody's lucky. Um, what advice or what statement you would like to leave here today?
Um, so I think the best advice I could leave to the listeners would be that, life is really tough, but you are tougher, especially for those former foster youth, foster care alumni. You don't have to be one of the statistics that I'm sure, Michael, you and I have frequently heard social workers warning us about in care. Um, Also, if listeners are unaware, research shows, former foster children are almost twice as likely to suffer from PTSD as veterans. Um, I think one of the most important pieces I can leave here today is don't let generational mistakes define who you are. You have the ability to create a new story for yourself.
Wow. I truly appreciate the time that you have taken to talk to an old friend um here today.
It was such a
Oh,
pleasure.
man, definitely. Um it truly means a lot to me. And I know I've mentioned it and you probably you're like, why you keep buttering me up? But I truly appreciate um
all that you are and all that you have been. Um, for me, I've learned a lot from you, watching you. And granted, I didn't know all these different things, but I think it's important for you to know and for others to know out there listening. Even though I didn't know the other things that were happening, I still learned a lot from you. And that goes to tell that you were still exhibiting leadership and giving out to people, even though your cup may have not always been full.
Thank
Um,
you.
and I truly appreciate that because, watching some of the things you've done in advocacy and how you supported others helped me and learn how to do certain things as such for myself. So thank you. I appreciate it. Um, yeah, yeah,
Thank you, Michael. It was such a pleasure talking with you today, reconnecting with you, and please let's stay in contact.
definitely. Um, before we go, how can people connect with you?
Um, the best way for people to connect with me is probably my LinkedIn. Um, I don't nearly have as many connections as you on LinkedIn, but I'm working on it. So my name on LinkedIn is just how it will appear in this episode. It's Miranda, last name Mizla. You can always connect with me on there. I am almost always on LinkedIn. So
Definitely. So you guys go connect, go tell her how wonderful this episode was. Definitely, definitely. But also to speak to what you mentioned earlier, social work is hard.
yeah,
Social work can you can have some really great days and then you can have some unfortunately some very defeating days too.
yeah,
So if you know a social worker or if you listen to this episode, share some words of encouragement, just some kind thoughts, some kind words. It's helpful to people who work within the child welfare space, but I would even expand that for people out here working in general. Life
mm-hmm.
has been
Oh yeah,
life. So as I get ready to close this out, I know that we have talked about some very heavy things, and it can be potentially triggering, open up some doors for some people. I just ask as you are navigating whatever space you are in, as you're listening to this in the car, at work, sitting outside, I don't know. Take some time to do some mindfulness exercises, do some deep breathing, bring yourself back down to center, baseline. If it's something that is open up some doors, and you don't know or don't have those supports, what have you, please don't hesitate to email me, message me, what have you. All my stuff is connected to this. I will be ecstatic to help you start your journey to healing or whatever you need, resources, support. Please, my door is always open. Um, and one thing I do want to say is because I realize a lot of people suffer in silence. A lot of people may listen to the podcast, may hear the stories, um, watch it on TV, and may not say anything. Whether it's mental health, abuse, whatever the circumstance may be. I just want you to know that you have a voice. And I will be more than happy to support you, help you, be a listening ear. Um, yeah, yeah. Also, it is cold and flu season.
yes it is. Get your flu
And
shot.
I know some people really look forward to this part and what I'm about to say. Um, because I went to the grocery store yesterday and there was somebody really they was coughing and um
Oh goodness gracious.
so it's cold and flu season. By taking care of yourself, you help take care of so many other people, not alone your own family. So just be careful out there, guys. A lot of these minor colds, the flu, COVID, all these other different um viruses, they're becoming very deadly. They evolve almost every year. And that may be an exaggeration. I'm not a scientist, don't quote me. But it seems to be that they're evolving every year. So please be careful. Wear a mask if you're not feeling well. Keep you some hand sanitizer on deck. Wash your hands too, because hand sanitizer, most of them only kill 99.9 or 89.9. It's still some germs still left on there. So, make sure you take some time to wash your hands. But be safe out there. Please. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world outside of just viruses, political things, this, that, and that's neither here or there for me. Just please be safe. Make sure you're taking time for yourself. Self-care matters. If you out here listening, I just ask, you text somebody, message someone that you haven't talked to in a while, you may have been lifing out here, I'm not telling nobody to go text a toxic ex or whoever, because it is not my fault. It is not whatever happened. Just go text somebody, telling you love them or you care about them, you're here for them, whatever. I understand. I have some friendships like that. We just life start getting in the way and we working, we all grinding, and next thing you know, it's been a month that passed. So just take somebody that's been on your mind, you haven't had the time, and just let them know. Because we are in winter. Winter can be very depressing for some folks, and different things like that. So please just be safe. With that being said, this has been Resilient Voices and Beyond, episode 29. No, 28. Yeah, 28. Um, no, 29. Look, let me not get to thinking. Yeah, episode 29. I hope you guys have a good night, good morning, good whenever you're listening to this. Talk to you guys soon.